I'll give three reasons that why this presentation can be helpful to the participants, because this presentation talks about the community capitals framework, which may be an unheard term for the veterinarians because it is not being covered in our theoretical aspects in our veterinary science curriculum. And also, as a veterinarian, we are more focused in maybe clinical approach. So sometimes these other concepts which have become important, they are missed out. So we'll be covering this community capitals approach, and then we'll try to understand that how this community capitals framework fits into the small ruminant sector of the India, and also how this is going to understand the concept of gender divide in small ruminant farming. And finally, I have a few case studies of successful interventions which have focused on gender balancing, on women empowerment. Because although gender is about men and women, but since women have been in disadvantageous position, as we'll understand through the CCF framework, so that is why we are focusing upon the empowerment of the disadvantageous gender. This will be my overview of lecture. So I'll be briefly discussing about the state of small ruminant farming, then the gender factor, then specifically the third part, which is the community capitals framework. This will be an important focus of my presentation. And through this framework, we'll try to understand the gender divide in animal husbandry and small ruminant rearing. And then we'll try to understand what are the constraints through a gender angle, and some of the case studies on the gender interventions that we will discuss. So let's come to the small ruminant farming. This must be clear to many of you that goat and sheep, they play an important role, and almost 33 million rural households, they are engaged in goat farming. Then we have, as already told, that a large proportion, if we have three farmers rearing small ruminants, out of those three, two will be the marginal farmers who will be rearing sheep and goat. And this sector offers good opportunity to provide employment to women. But right now, what is happening is most of these small ruminants, they are being reared under low input system, and the national average flock size average is also pretty small. It stands for 4 animals. In case of Rajasthan and Andhra, this may be high, up to 24, but by and large, the flock size is very small and it's being reared under low input system. As already discussed, majority of the farmers, they are either marginal small farmers and landless farmers. And small ruminants, they are particularly useful in the semi-arid and arid regions of the country, where they support the farmers during difficult years such as drought, and they can be a significant source of livelihood to farmers in the dryland regions. This is one more fact which talks about that how sheep and goat, they are providing livelihood to farmers in the dryland regions of the country. As we know, India is a very diverse country, and we have areas under arid regions, under semi-arid regions, cold arid regions. There we'll find small ruminant making more impact to the livelihood, to the households. Again, the data, as you can see in the third point, we say that out of the total households rearing sheep in the country, almost 89% are coming from dryland regions. You can say almost 90% is from dryland regions. Again, for the goats, almost 67% is from the dryland regions. So small ruminants are contributing a lot in the economy of dryland regions. And why the marginal and small farmers are keeping livestock? Because it is easy to keep them, because the financial requirement and the labor investment is pretty less, and also the returns are faster. So that is why the small farmers, the marginal farmers, they are keeping it. Now let's come specifically to the gender factor in small ruminant rearing in India. Women are playing an important role Why? Because these animals are easier to manage when it comes to the larger ruminants, say, for example, a cow. Small ruminants are easier to manage. And also, as it has been seen worldwide, including India, when it comes to ownership of land, it will be in the name of men. When it comes to the ownership of larger animals, larger ruminants, again the men may be taking majority of the decisions. But for small ruminants and poultry, generally it is observed that women have a greater say. So if we develop small ruminant sector, we are going to empower women, and we will build a community which is more inclusive. So small ruminant is unique in that sense. This sector is unique in that sense because this can lead to women empowerment if we invest in small ruminant sector, and this will also lead to more inclusive development in the society. How? Because as we are saying that the landless farmers, the marginal farmers, mostly women, they are taking care of this sector. So if we develop this sector, those set of farmers will be benefited more. So that is why we say it will be a more inclusive, more sustainable development if we focus on this particular sector. As you can see from this particular picture, a large proportion of labor for small ruminant production is being offered by the woman. And most of the daily activities in small ruminants is being done by women. Whether it's about watering the sheep and goat, care of the pregnant does, taking goats for grazing, cleaning of the sheds, feeding. Although these particular tasks, you can say they are low skill based tasks. They do not as such require high skills, but these tasks are very important from the health and production point of view, because if we do not clean the sheds regularly, it will lead to more disease prevalence in these small ruminants. So women are engaged in these activities, although they are low skilled, but they are very important from the animal health and production point of view. Whereas we have certain tasks which are occasionally performed, so maybe a shed construction. So for that, the decisions are mostly being taken by the men folk, also in terms of sale, purchase, healthcare, buying feed from the market. Here you can see, as per the studies, although studies are sporadic, we do not have as such pan-India studies or very exhaustive studies on these aspects. But some of the studies which I could find, they suggest that these are the activities where men folk have a greater say. And also joint decision making may also happen in certain areas of small ruminant rearing. Of course, this all these decision makings and division of labor may vary from culture to culture, and the existing socio-culture norms, they decide how this decision making and division of labor happens in small ruminant sector. Now, this is already, I believe, this is understood, or this is the participants are aware about how small ruminant rearing contributes to the livelihoods, social inclusion, and food security. Now, let's come to this particular aspect, which is the community capitals framework. Now, community capitals framework is a concept to understand the how these assets are utilized in a community. This particular framework says that in a community we can have 7 different types of capitals. So they can be, one is natural capital, the other is cultural capital, then we see the human capital, social capital, political capital, financial capital, and the physical capital. So all these forms of capital, they contribute towards a healthy and vibrant community with a vital economy. So that's why these are important to understand. And once we have this community capitals framework in mind, we can more effectively strategize and plan for comprehensive development in any sector, including the small ruminant rearing. And we'll understand all these aspects one by one. So the first is the natural capital. So natural capital means any region which has what are the resources, what are the natural resources which a region has, maybe in terms of land, plants, animals, forest, water, and soil. And why this natural capital is important as a small ruminant rearer? Because when I'm going to rear small ruminants, I'll depend upon all these, maybe not all, but a majority of these resources to make my farming more profitable. So let us understand through the small ruminant sector. So for small ruminants, it will be the type of land which is available in a region, the availability of water and pastures, breeds, grazing areas. They will influence the development of small ruminant sector in a particular region. And specifically, when we give the example of, we take the angle of gender and social capital, we say that in terms of gender, women are managing the some of the natural capital. I'm sorry for the wrong typing. For the natural capital, such as land and water and sustainable practices. But when it comes to having a control or access over the natural capital, such as land and water, women are in disadvantageous position. How? Globally, 13.8% women are landholders. So we can say largely land ownership is in the hand of the men. And if at all the women they have ownership of land, they have smaller land holding size. Now this influences their decision making. So if the land is not in the name of the woman, it is going to influence her decision about grazing, about managing the land, how land has to be put to use, what kind of fodder crop I need to grow to feed my sheep and goat. So land ownership has an influence on small ruminant rearing, and here women have been found to be in disadvantageous position. Now, second is the cultural capital. So, cultural capital of a community, you can say how a community sees the world, what are their traditions, values, and how those values and language influences the creativity and innovation. So, for example, if we have a community which is very orthodox in nature, which doesn't like new ideas or innovations, so naturally, a new breed, a new technology will not be introduced easily. On the other hand, we have a community which is more open about new ideas, innovations, using innovative use of resources. Then that community will have a better adoption of newer breeds, newer types of vaccinations, newer types of any technology for that sake in small ruminant sector. So cultural capital also plays an important role in small ruminant development of a region. And again, when we see from the gender point of view, we'll find that the cultural norms, they put women in a disadvantageous position. So maybe when it comes to decision related to breeding or selling of the livestock, or taking the animal to market, or maybe decision regarding any other aspects. So women they have the cultural norms, specifically in developing countries, or for the matter across the world, but more in the developing countries, including India, the cultural capital or the cultural norms, they put women in disadvantageous position. Cultural norms may also restrict the women's participation in decision making processes, especially related to marketing. And then cultural norms may also decide what kind of work a woman will be doing in small ruminant rearing. Maybe she'll be more involved in feeding of the animals, less in reaching out to the veterinarians, reaching out to the extension persons to seek advice, because that is being dictated by the cultural norms of a community. So that is how cultural capital and gender can influence the small ruminant rearing in a particular area. Sometimes we have cultural biases also. So maybe meat and milk consumption is being favored for the male members of the family. We already see in our families that it is mostly the male or the men members of the family who will be taking meals first, and then the females take. So such kinds of traditions and biases, they put women in disadvantaged positions. Sometimes maybe women are prohibited from holding livestock before marriages, or such kind of cultural biases may also be existing in a particular region. Now, the third kind of capital which we'll talk about is the human capital, which is the knowledge, skills, and abilities of we the humans, which we can develop through education by investing in the health, leadership skills. Now, why this matters? This matters because until unless we ourselves, or for that matter, our farmers are not healthy and educated, their willingness to understand new ideas, their willingness to adopt new technologies will be jeopardized, that will be compromised. Here again, what we find that this is clear actually, that when it comes to education and healthcare, women are in a disadvantageous position. There is a gap when it comes to literacy in women farmers. There is a gap when it comes to healthcare for women. So when they do not have proper access, their ability to acquire skills and knowledge for effective small ruminant management will be compromised. So that is also one area where women have disadvantageous position when it comes to human capital. Also, there is another angle also. The women farmers, they may have a lot of traditional knowledge about feeding resources, about disease management, but that practical knowledge, which is also one form of human capital, that may not be taken care of by the scientific institutions, by the veterinarians. And maybe over the process, over the period of time, that knowledge may be lost forever, which the women of our country hold. Now, when it comes to development of human capital, training and extension is extremely important to build the capital, human capital of our farmers. But what has been found that trainings, more focus has been on cattle, and small ruminants have been neglected. So small ruminant suffers from this limitation, that most of our attention has been on dairy animals. And also, again, extension services are primarily directed towards men. So there is a study which says that only 15% of the extension agents are women, and 85% are men. And men, or the male agents, have a bias where they'll be focusing more on the male farmers. So again, women have lesser access to training, to extension, to information, and they are also less likely to use the novel digital technologies such as mobile phones, internets. So again, when it comes to human capital, the women, they are in disadvantaged position. Now, the fourth type of capital which we'll talk about is the social capital, which is in terms of networks, trust, and cooperation. Now, why network, why this social capital matters? Because ultimately it is the social bonding which helps people to access the resources to develop their skills. And this social capital can be of three types. That is, one is the bonding type, which is within a group. So we have strong bonding with our family members, or maybe some primary group. So that bonding is also important, because as we say, whether it's about business, whether it's about the corporate world, whether it's about the sports, until unless we have a good bonding, we cannot run businesses effectively, we cannot run enterprises effectively, we cannot run a vocation, say small ruminant rearing cannot be run properly until unless we have a strong bonding. This applies to the SHG group also. Another kind of social capital is the bridging, when you are connecting with diverse groups. And then is the linking part, which is the connection to maybe vertical connection, maybe to a higher agency. So these kinds of networking are extremely important, and this also applies for the small ruminant sector. So as I was saying, bonding social capital is, this is the ability to work closely with people who are closest to us. But the bridging social capital is when you are able to reach out to people with diverse socioeconomic groupings. And linking social capital is when you are able to connect with people who are in influential positions. To benefit from social capital, we need all these kinds of capital. Now, here again, if you look from the gender dimension, for the farmers, membership to cooperatives and groups. This is, you can say, a good way to build their social capital. This is a good way through which they can improve their bargaining power. So, for example, if I am a sheep farmer and I have only 4 sheep with me, and if I have to individually sell it to a distant market, or for that matter, I have to buy a feed or any kind of input for my sheep and goat, it will be very difficult for me because I have only 4 sheep and goat. I may be a resource poor farmer. But if many farmers like me, maybe 100 farmers, they come together and they form a cooperative, then for us, it will be easier for us to bargain with the buyer. It will be easier for us to arrange the inputs. So that's how these cooperatives, they help farmers to build their bargaining powers, to build their capacities, to enhance their incomes, and to get support of input services and marketing. Now, again, men and women, they have differential access to the cooperatives, as this is clear that the membership of cooperatives is skewed towards men. 70% of the workforce in dairy in India is women. But when it comes to membership, only 31% of membership in cooperatives are from the women's side. So, again, in terms of social capital, women are in a disadvantageous position. Men have higher access to the formal institutions, whereas women, they may be relying more on their neighborhood, some relative, or some informal institutions. They have that kind of access to social capital. And why social capital is important in small dominant sectors, specifically, social capital, those networks with the farmers, with the traders, with the market, or with the NGOs, helps farmers to obtain the breeding stock. It helps them to know more about small ruminant rearing. It helps them to know more about how to for the production related information, or maybe marketing related information. So that is why social capital is important for the small ruminant farming also. And again, here also, social capital, women have a limited involvement because of prevailing norms. Sometimes the discussions may happen where the men farmers, they may be dominating the discussions. And also, as a male farmer, since I'll go to a nearby village shop, so I'll have discussions, I'll read more newspapers, I'll be using more mobile phones. Unlike the women, they have time constraint, as well as they have a limited access to the modern technologies. So here also, their access to information will be lesser than the men farmers. So this is also one aspect where they are in disadvantageous position. When it comes to the bonding type of capital, although women have lesser access, but if you look at the experiences of self-help groups of the country, they suggest that women, they have a tendency to work well in the groups, and especially the bonding social capital can work very well for the women farmers. Now, the fifth type of capital is the political capital, which says that the ability of a group of people to influence the standards of social institutions. So, for example, if you can say, as we could learn from our experience, that how the farmers of northern India, Punjab and Haryana, they could modify the regulations of the central government about the laws which were passed for the market regulations, because they had that political capital. They had that capability to influence the social institutions and to make them work in their favor, to influence the distribution of resources. So political capital is about having a say that how resources are distributed and used. And here again, we'll find that women have barriers in participating in the political processes related to dairy productions, because again, the decision making role in these bodies, these cooperatives, these maybe a political institution which is working with the farmers. Again, the say and the decision making is mostly being done by the men farmers. Another aspect in the political capital is the decision making or the power relations within the households. Although it is observed that when it comes to small ruminant sector, women have a greater decision making power to decide what has to be done for small ruminant about production and marketing. But evidences say that if the number of the small ruminants will increase, if it becomes more commercial, then the men will generally try to take over that enterprise. So again, this puts the women in disadvantageous position. Although majority of the women workforce in dairying is the women, but again, still now the membership, 70% of the members are male farmers. Now, the next kind of capital is the financial capital. So, any kind of enterprise, for that matter, small ruminant based enterprise, money is required. And what are the sources of money? It is the formal banking system or some informal arrangements. So, we say financial capital is one of the most flexible forms of capital. But here again, what we find that women have more challenges in accessing the financial resources for small ruminant production. And what are the reasons? Again, there may be biasing in the lending practices of the for the women. As I've already discussed, that women don't have land ownership. They don't have ownership for major resources. So they do not have any collateral, any bank guarantee to seek a loan. So, for example, if some women folk wishes to seek loan under NLM, National Livestock Mission, so that requires a collateral, which maybe a woman farmer may not have. Also, she has a limited control over the finances, and it is easier for the men to get the loans because they can offer something. Also, in rural parts of India, we find that a large proportion of our women, they are illiterate. They often cannot read and write. They have weaker financial literacy aspect. So again, here also we find that women have disadvantages when it comes to assessing financial capital. Also, various government schemes. So, take the example of Pashu Kisan Credit Card Scheme, which offers easy credit for the farmers, but it doesn't make any specific provisions for the women farmers. So, as we know, women farmers, they have limited mobility, they have restrictions to move out easily. Their financial literacy aspect is weaker, but nowhere we have tried to address the needs of the women farmers. Because of that, there is lack of financial inclusion of the women farmers, and what it causes, it prevents them to adopt any modern livestock or husbandry practices. So financial capital, again, the women are in disadvantaged position. Now the final form of capital is the physical capital, which we say in terms of infrastructure of an area, the roads, health centers, equipments, tools. Again, this type of capital affects the other aspects of rural development, including small ruminant production. Because if we have good infrastructure, then the farmers, they have better access to trainings, they'll have better access to veterinary services, they'll have better access to markets and income generation. So physical capital is also important. Physical capital also includes the processing equipment, some electronic communication, and if this physical capital is poor, this would compromise to the farmers' access to training, inputs, and income generation. And again, in terms of physical capital, women may be in disadvantageous position. Maybe they have lesser access to the labor saving technologies, to the storage techniques, the knowledge to use a new technology. Already, women have a lot of drudgeries there. They have a lot of work to do. They have to take care of their families. They have to cook food. They have to take care of the children. And sometimes, as a researcher, we may be promoting a technology to boost production, but we haven't seen the gender angle. Maybe, say for example, we say that silage is a very good technology to promote milk production. But if you look about the traditional way of preparing silage, and if this technology is promoted, this may put additional burden to the women, So we have to think from that direction also. And sometimes when these aspects are not looked upon, then technology failure happens. Again, the infrastructures, they can affect men and women differently. While women may benefit from the health services, men may be using roads to transport the animals. So we have to see every aspect of capital from different angles. Also, when it comes to creating a physical infrastructure, for example, you're creating a water bills, you're creating washing facilities, you're creating veterinary hospitals. So many times what happens, the men folk are involved in decision making, so they may not be able to foresee the problems being faced by the women farmers. You're creating a veterinary dispensary in an area which may be inconvenient or unsafe for the women. You're having a veterinary dispensary, but maybe that veterinary dispensary doesn't have a toilet facility for the women veterinarian or women farmers. So that may happen because the involvement of women is not there when it comes to decision making for physical capital creation. So this was about all forms of capital through the community capital framework, and from this I have tried to explain the gender divide in small government sector, and then I'll come to the some of the constraints which the small government sector faces, and through a gender lens. So again, when it comes to the veterinary services, we are focused more on the dairy animals. For small ruminants, the preventive healthcare is important, but we are not focusing on the preventive healthcare much. And we have a more bias toward male farmers, because we have to understand that many times it is the women farmers who are rearing the animals, who are rearing the sheep and goat. So they may be more aware about the health issues, the problems which the animal is facing. And generally what happens, a male farmer visits a veterinary hospital, a veterinarian passes the information to the male farmer. A male farmer will be going to the market, he'll be sitting over there smoking a cigarette or a bd, and then he'll come back, and maybe 50% of the information is lost. So that gap is there, and that is why that affects the quality of veterinary services and advice to the farmers. Again, when the women, they are more engaged in small ruminant husbandry practices, so they have a higher exposure risk to the zoonotic diseases, and if at all they contract a zoonotic disease, they are less likely to receive a timely diagnosis and adequate treatment compared to men farmers. Again, we say that the focus, there is lack of awareness on scientific practices on various aspects of small ruminant farming, and because of that farmers are keeping less animals. So maybe we are not able to reach out our women farmers. So that may be one of the reasons why the awareness remains low. Feed and fodder scarcity is also there. Now let's try to know some of the successful gender interventions in small ruminant sector of India. I have certain few case studies. The first one is by the BAF. As we know, BAF is a very reputed NGO which is Pune based, and they started a goat husbandry project in West Bengal in 2006. This project had an objective of increasing the productivity of animal and promoting eco-friendly goat husbandry practices, but the focus was on the goat keeping women groups. So this was their focus. What happened because of the focus? It was seen that there was better health and weight gain, genetic improvement was there, mortality reduction was there, flock enhancement happened. Now, why this happened? Because we focused on training women, we created some local field guides, mostly women, and that led to the improvement in the productivity indicators of the small ruminants. Then this program was expanded to Rajasthan and Jharkhand also, and they created a concept of, you can say, Pashu Shakhi or the Paravet, where that woman farmer would be providing regular guidance to the goat keepers to learn good husbandry practices and to make them more profitable. So that was the first case study. Now, the second one is about the women empowerment program in Bihar through small ruminants. This is being implemented by Aga Khan Rural Support Program and supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The name of the project is Bisha, which means goat or sheep in Sanskrit. Now, what is happening in this particular program? They have already reached out to 50,000 women. They have created SHGs, goat producer groups, and they are working in two aspects. One is the value chain enhancement for the complete goat value chain, and they are creating the Pashu Sakhis, which are providing preventive veterinary services for their services in the villages of this region. Now, this has led to improvement in the income of the goat rearing families, especially the migrant workers, also income sources to the women veterinary, paraveterinary staff through castrations, vaccinations, and deworming. And there has been increased demand for such kind of services. So overall, this is helping the women through small ruminant development. There has been reduction in the mortality rates of goats, better herd size, and also some of the women folks, they have started some enterprises, maybe mineral feed block making or mineral mixture formulation, azola cultivation. So these things have also come up. These are the benefits through this project. For the women, they have greater control of the income, and their economic empowerment is happening. And they also are able to overcome those traditional social barriers and resistances. So that social angle is also social development is also happening for the women farmers. And in this program, they are thinking about creating some farmer companies to negotiate for better prices. So the third case study is about the Goat Trust contribution. Again, Goat Trust is working in 14 states with 50 organizations, and they are working for value addition and livestock-based products. They are offering doorstep services, first aid services, low cost services through for primarily focusing on the women farmers. The fourth program is by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and IFAD, which is focusing on goat because Bill Gates himself sees that goat has a substantial potential in India. Already, the goat demand is increasing, and there is a lot of scope in working in this direction. And they have a three-step approach. They are thinking in terms of goat value chain, then innovation platforms, and goat enterprise and market development planning aspect they're thinking about. So goat value chain, they will be covering from the farm to the fork. They'll be studying it, and specifically they'll be collecting the gender disaggregated data. Now this is extremely important. When I say gender disaggregated data, this means women wise the data about the roles and contributions. So while I was preparing for these presentations, I was unable to find concrete gender disaggregated data for men and women farmers in small ruminant farming. We had reports then of how much meat production has increased, what are the different kinds of breeds, what is the feeding constraint. Technical aspects were there, but that gender wise data was missing, because until unless we have gender wise data, we cannot formulate policies which specifically meets to the needs of men and women farmers. So maybe this foundation will work in this direction to collect the data on gender disaggregation basis. So the second component of this foundation will be on innovation platforms, where they'll create some platforms for private and public actors to create policies which are targeted for both the men farmers, especially for the women farmers, where their views, their experiences, their innovative ideas are taken into consideration. Third is about the goat enterprise and market development planning. Now, this is the final case study, which is about the Theni Goat Farmer Producer Company, which is based in Theni district of Tamil Nadu. So this is a community-driven approach. So initially, the women farmers, they had created a self-help group through an NGO, and then they conducted a survey. And from the survey, they found that goat was a common need identified by the farmer. The community thought that goat rearing is can be a good vocation to start with, and then these women farmers, they were trained on goat rearing, and specifically they were using the audio files through mobile phones to learn more about the goat farming. And then in 2015, they created a tiny goat farmer producer company comprising of 1050 women farmers. And this particular company, as we know, now this farmer producer organization and FPCs, they are coming up. So this helps farmers to reach out to the markets, to avoid the middlemen, to have better price relation. So with that aim, this company was created, and now because of this company, the women farmers, they have a better access to market, they have a higher bargaining power, and that is helping them to enhance their income. And this particular company is using innovative training approaches through mobile based learning. Also during COVID time, this company diversified into other enterprises also, so it helped the farmers to cope up with the COVID pandemic. So this particular case study highlights how if we have innovative ideas, then the small dominant training can have transformative impact on women's empowerment. So the summary of my presentation is that gender is an important factor in small dominant rearing, because women plays an extremely crucial role. But through a community capital framework, we can say there is a huge gender divide in all aspects of community capitals, whether it's social capital, natural capital, financial capital. There is a gap, and the prevailing norms, they put women in the disadvantageous position. But there are successful case studies which suggest that it is possible to develop this sector, and it is also possible to have a more inclusive approach with the women empowerment also in the picture. So with this, this brings to an end to my presentation.